Now, I want to follow up on this story I brought you last night because on the program here last night, I called out the ABC's Sarah Ferguson for a so-called fact check that she put up on social media. Now, Ferguson, the 7:30 program host, true to the ABC's Green Left form, was trying to rebut opposition leader Susan Lee's claim that the renewables rollout was behind our rising electricity prices. Listen to this bold claim.
Power bills are high, but the rollout of renewables are not the cause.
Well, last night I explained why that was plain wrong. Clearly, the reason our electricity prices have risen to record levels and will continue to rise is the renewables push. Ferguson's blatant furphy is typical of ABC bias and of the misinformation in this debate. So I decided to get an expert and independent analysis from Matt Rennie, Executive Director of Rennie Advisory, and I put to him whether the cause of high power prices is or is not the push to renewables.
Well, I'd say mathematically it is the cause for higher prices. The story really began with one in four households having rooftop solar, which has caused an enormous amount of solar spill into the market. That, of course, has made life hard for coal. And what we're now seeing is coal shadowing gas towards the end of the day and the average price rising. Renewables of all kinds are more expensive than coal, with the exception of baseload solar, which is essentially free.
Now, you say this as someone who's committed to the transition to renewables. In fact, your business advises people on how to decarbonise and take advantage of all this, yet you say straight up that the push to renewables has so far pushed prices up.
There's no doubt. We've had the advantage of decades of very low-priced coal-fired power. Coal-fired power is the lowest and it is the most reliable form of generation going around. With the technical life and the economic life of coal-fired power, there will be a change over to a new system, and that new system is most likely to be renewables and storage with a little bit of gas and some hydro. But there's no point saying it's going to be cheaper because it's not.
So do we expect power price increases to continue into the future, and will they eventually drop off from this trajectory, or are we locked into a higher electricity forever?
I think we're locked into high electricity prices for at least the next 5 to 10 years. And the reason for that is all organisms are committed to their own survival. Coal-fired power stations are no different. It's very hard for them to be economically sustainable during the day because of the amount of spill solar. It's natural that they would try and bid in later in the day where the demand is higher. That's causing, or it's one of the causes for prices rising. But then in the shift to baseload power with wind and solar in particular for the rest of the day, so that 5 p.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning, we're seeing an increase from, say, coal-fired generation of $55 a megawatt hour to wind, which is in that $95 to $110 a megawatt hour range, unfirmed. And so it's inevitably, it's a cleaner system, but it's a more expensive system compared to what we've had.
Now, I'll come back to some of those causes in a moment, but first up, when you talk about higher power prices for the next 5 or 10 years, do they then drop, or do they then just sort of go along with CPI, if you like, stay at that higher level?
Well, once the system's transitioned, it will get to a point where they won't go up anymore. What we have with solar is a very, very cheap form of energy during the day. Of course, that won't keep going until the power's off. Until the sun goes down behind a cloud or goes down at the end of the day. So batteries will then pick up that load between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. With wind base loading as well. What worries me is that midnight to 6 a.m. time where demand is low but there needs to be enough wind, and that's the hydro piece. But we would expect in the next sort of 5 to 10 years as coal rolls out, which is too early for coal to do now, I should say, but as it does roll out, that hopefully prices will plateau.
Now, tell us about those other inputs into price increases. You've talked about the interchange between solar and coal and gas. What about transmission? The additional transmission needed for renewables is increasing massively the capital outlay. That's feeding into prices a little now. Is that going to increase?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So there's two things that are going to change in the next 10 years as we move to this new system on the network side. So networks is, of course, the very large lines, the transmission lines, and then the ones that run up and down the street, the distribution lines. On the transmission side, we're moving from very singly located large generation sources in coal to a large number of individual smaller sites through renewables. And that, of course, is adding infrastructure, and that infrastructure will add cost. On the distribution side, as we move into an environment of EVs and solar buyback and household batteries, the grid needs to be more resilient. And so we're expecting a rebuild there as well. So on the network side, it's inevitable that prices will rise.
Now, as you know, I take a deep interest in these issues, and everything you say makes sense. Not only makes sense, but it's stacked up by the verifiable facts we are seeing around us. Shouldn't our politicians, especially the government leading this transition now, just be more open and upfront about it and say, yeah, it's going to be a cleaner system. Let's hope it's reliable, but it certainly will be more expensive.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. These three limbs of affordability, reliability and sustainability appeal to different parts of the population, of course, but the one that is dominating people's thoughts at the moment is affordability. And then reliability is a real piece that AEMO's picked up recently in saying that Eraring can't come out of the system. The sustainability part has been dominating a lot of state government policy for the last 5 years, and it's coming off. And what we're now seeing is policies, particularly in Queensland, for example, that are weighted more heavily towards affordability and reliability. But more generally, it's just balancing those interests across the population.
Matt Reddy, thanks so much for talking to us.
Thanks so much, Chris.